Okay, so that was a pretty damn good game one, I would say. Definitely a tale of two halves. The Clippers were rolling and then they were not rolling. I feel like there were a lot of interesting things to take from this game. Now, of course, Mike Conley's injury is the thing looming over the whole series right now. But we saw Gobert defending against the small lineups. We saw Gobert defending against when the Clippers had a big in there. And we also saw Donovan Mitchell decide in the third quarter that he was just going to take over 45 points. And yeah, sure, he definitely made some contested threes, 6 for 15 from three, and some of those you're just going to have to live with. You get a good contest, don't foul, hope for the best, right? But it was how easily he was able to just get inside. He had the 8 free throw attempts, and he had a number of finishes at the basket. I don't know how many exactly. It seemed like the Clippers attempted to bring a double team for one of the few times late, but the angle in which the double came was like really stupid, so Mitchell saw it right away and he was able to get to the rim. And, he was definitely targeting guys out there. Reggie Jackson ended up fouling out, and a lot of that was from Mitchell. Not that I remember every single one of his fouls, but I'm pretty sure at least the last one was because of Mitchell. And I guess it's going to be a similar thing to what we were saying in the last round. Like, is it just going to be a lot of PG, a lot of Kawhi on Donovan Mitchell? Are you just going to take your chances that Luke Kennard and Reggie Jackson and these guys can survive out there against him? As far as this game was concerned, didn't really work too well. I feel like this kind of would have been the game to double team Mitchell because Conley's not there. I mean, look, Ingles is a good passer, Mitchell's good, and yeah, you still need to be pretty smart with the double, especially with this Jazz team that has so much spacing and Gobert who can finish at the rim. But I still feel like you can have success if you force Mitchell to make a play. Now, on the flip side, PG was not great, and he did get a few possessions where Gobert was switched onto him. And then he elected to go to the jump shot. He had that step back 3 attempt late, and some of those shots will go in. I'd like to think he can beat Gobert in one-on-ones. I would also like to think that he just has enough of a size advantage on most of these Jazz defenders to where he can just do his stuff, even if it's in your normal, frustrating, sometimes one-on-one Clippers basketball stuff. To keep with the Jazz offense, Gobert had 10 points, and he was definitely not able to kill the Clippers when they went small. If Conley is back, then it's going to be easier because Conley's like the one guy who's really locked in on like getting Gobert the ball. And part of that is because he's the guy who runs the most screens with him, right? At least I would guess so. But still, he wasn't able to kill them for going small. Derek Favors wasn't either, and so I still feel like there's potential there. I mean, there were a number of possessions in this game where Gobert was switched onto a good player, whether it was PG, Kawhi, Marcus Morris, just somebody who he has to respect as a shooter. I mean, what the Jazz tried to do was play zone pretty much. There were times where Gobert was sticking to a wing player, but then he would kind of creep into the paint as a possession was going for the Clippers. And I mean, if Rondo's in there, he's going to stick to him. And it seemed like Batum was the guy who Gobert was sort of defending. But still, as the Clippers were swinging the ball around and as they had certain guys setting screens, there were definitely times where it was Gobert on a switch. And I just feel like there's a lot of potential there, whether it's getting some cut action going once Gobert has committed to who he's guarding, whether that's, especially if it's Kawhi or PG just beating Gobert off the dribble. I mean, a lot of it tonight was just trying to take a jumper over Gobert. I know PG did that a few times, and I mean, we'll see if that's really successful. Gobert's long as hell, of course. But still, like if the Jazz can slow down the Clippers offense with Gobert constantly switching on to perimeter players, then okay. But I feel like there's more potential there. As far as when Zubac was out there, actually, I want to talk about the insane 4 minutes of DeMarcus Cousins. My guess is that's not going to happen too much, but it was a crazy moment of like, oh, he can shoot threes, and they're not making him pay for dropping on screen, so it's somehow working. Anyway, to talk about the Zubac minutes, so there was definitely at least one Clarkson screen where he pulled up because Zubac wasn't able to step up on him. And I just feel like as the series goes along, the Jazz are going to be able to lean into that so much. I don't know if they super did it tonight. There were definitely a few attempts at it, but there were also times where it was like Ingles was running the screen, and Ingles is not going to go into the pull-up three as much as Mitchell and Clarkson will. So I feel like Zubats was bailed out a couple times from just dropping on screens. But in terms of just bodying up Gobert, I felt like Zubats was pretty all right. I mean, from a simple box score look, he pretty much matched Gobert, but he played 13 less minutes. It doesn't mean a super lot, but it means something, certainly. Gobert also had 5 fouls in this game, which that could be an interesting thing as the series goes along. There was one play where Kawhi just kind of pushed Gobert out of the way when he was around the rim. To talk about Kawhi's game a bit, I mean, he did have the foul trouble, and I feel like that did kind of screw them up a little bit because, I mean, there were moments where it was like Luke Kennard had to hit gutsy threes, and we had those 4 minutes of Boogie that were like kind of huge when they were happening, and Reggie Jackson had to hit a couple of crazy threes, and eventually it fell back to Kawhi, and it seemed like he was barely in the game, and maybe that affected him in some way. I'm not too concerned about Kawhi. I mean, even in this game, he was still pretty damn all right. You know, he had some post-up opportunities, and there were a couple of mid-range pull-ups where it seemed like his jumper was kind of flat. It was sort of weird. Like, he kept front rimming it, which is not too normal with Kawhi. I mean, the guy barely missed any shots against Dallas, so I'm not too concerned there. I don't think Royce O'Neal and whoever else might be the primary defender can guard him too much, but the one thing that should be said is the Jazz did do a good job of zoning up and defending like the other side of the floor. There were definitely times where you could tell the Clippers were trying to get inside, and the Jazz did a good job of sort of collapsing, but not leaving their guys so much to where it was just open threes all day. That said, the Clippers, they did shoot 42 threes, and they certainly missed some open ones. So it'll be interesting. I mean, Marcus Morris, he was 1 for 9 from 3, and he had a number of threes where, he had the one at the end where Gobert blocked him, but there were a decent amount of threes where Morris was the guy who ended up being open from the Gobert zone defense, and I think the Clippers will be okay with that. So it was definitely an interesting game one. The Clippers will probably just tell themselves, well, if we make some of the shots we missed, we'll feel good. The Jazz will say, we made them uncomfortable. Kawhi and PG weren't able to just do whatever they wanted. We fared pretty well with Gobert, either in a zone or switching on to wing players. And also, like, Royce O'Neal didn't make a three. Joe Ingles missed a lot of his shots, and they didn't have Mike Conley. So both teams can feel pretty good. As far as the adjustments, again, I would say some action off of when Gobert has switched. So it's not just a one-on-one. I mean, yeah, you like your chances of Kawhi and PG versus him on the perimeter, but also like some cuts and that sort of thing. That could be good. And for the Jazz, it's hope that Conley's back. And besides that, I think, they ran some interesting stuff where it was like they would act like Bogdanovich is going to set a screen for Mitchell, and then he would just jet to the wing, and he got at least 1-3 off of that. And, just general flare screens from the corner, that sort of thing, to just get like Mitchell, Bogdanovich, Ingles, Clarkson, just get those guys going a little bit more. Not to say that the Jazz offense was a problem tonight. It seemed pretty damn good from the second half on. So yeah, it was a good game one, and the Clippers, I think game two is a must win. I don't think they can withstand going down 2-0 again.